Hi everybody, my name is Luke Armstrong and I oversee franchise sales for the F45 Training Network. And I'm joined today by a very special guest who I'll introduce shortly. Just weeks ago, this reality that much of the world finds itself in today would have seemed like just a fantasy. In just the last week, we've seen local communities, states, and even countries go into lockdown as the experts preach the virtues of social isolation and flattening the curve when it comes to dealing with this pandemic. For many of us, our initial response is one of disbelief and possibly even helplessness as mandatory business closures start to threaten our very livelihood. Many of us are probably asking ourselves, when will this all end? It's certainly been a question that I've returned to repeatedly over the last week. But buried in all the headlines, there is a bright point, which is that China seems to be emerging out of this crisis. And it occurred to me that in our very network, we have a number of people who have been in this reality for much longer than we have in the West. And it might be very helpful and useful for business owners and coaches who are going through this for the first time as of a week ago to hear from somebody who's been on the front line. And so I welcome Lauren Hogan from F45, Shui, Jing An, and soon to be, I'm going to ask for your help here, Lauren. What's the name of the next studio you're about to open?
Oh, so we have 3 open now. Xintiandi, Jing'an, and Shuhui are all open.
Xintiandi, okay, I hope I pronounced that correctly. And you've been a cornerstone of our China network for what, 2 or 3 years now? I think Shui was the
3
first
years.
studio open, 3 years.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of anyone tuning in that doesn't know your story, would you mind just giving us a sort of a short history of how you came to be working at F45 and what your experience has been like in the last 3 years?
Definitely. So I moved to China about 10 years ago at this point and was given the opportunity for working with F45 May of 2017. And in July, we opened our first location, Shuhui. So I went to the induction in LA, which is, I'm from the US. And since that time, we opened our first studio in July, our second one 6 months later, and then our third, we just opened this past year in 2019. So looking to open our fourth once this all dies down.
Great. And your role within the group, you're a general manager of, do you oversee all of the studios or just one in particular?
All 3 of them. Yes, correct.
Okay. Wow. That's a big remit. And so, yeah, I mean, kudos for you. It's hard enough overseeing one studio in your home country, but you've overseen a pretty remarkable growth of a network in a completely foreign country. How long were you in China before you started working with us?
Prior to that, I moved to China in end of 2010 and Shanghai the end of 2011. So I've been here for about 9 years now and started in journalism, which was my degree, and now have obviously transitioned into fitness along the way.
Wow. And I mean, prior to this upheaval, I mean, what was the market response there in mainland China to F45?
Very, very well. It's it definitely, the fact that it's a global brand has helped us because it is a global community as well. We have trainers and members from all over the world, many of whom have probably trained at studios that are listening right now. So that's really been a big help for us in terms of getting the brand and the name out there. And then as well as with the local market, there's definitely been this push for fitness in the last few years, and F45 fits the bill very, very well here, and has been quite a pleasure to work with since we started here.
Amazing. So, I mean, this coronavirus pandemic is only a very, very recent phenomenon. I mean, in the reading that I've done, authorities seem to only come to recognize this in very, very late December of last year. So it's sort of been around for only 3 months. Could you just describe, for the benefit of anyone tuning in, what the kind of the timeline of events was like for you there in Shanghai?
Definitely. So because we are a very expat heavy. In December, around Christmas time, we usually have a drop-off point, and then 2 weeks later was our national Chinese New Year. So the biggest migration here in China and in the world, where everyone leaves and goes back to their hometown. And of course, a lot of people travel then as well, as businesses are usually shut. We always stay open. We just reduce the schedule because enough people stay around that we find a benefit to do it. The first 3 days was when things were starting to kick off. And after day number 3, we just made the decision to close because it was just this unknown period of what to do. Members are starting to get concerned. Trainers are starting to get concerned. Let's just hit the pause button and kind of take a step back, reassess where we're at. And
so within three days of hearing about this, you decided to voluntarily close.
Yeah, when things were starting to kick off, I think there had been some talk, and then after the 3-day mark, it was like, okay, we're hearing some other studios are closing, so maybe we should follow suit.
Wow, incredible. Okay, so you went into voluntary closure, and I mean, what was the response from the community? Did they understand? Was there any resistance to you closing initially?
I think there was a little hesitation. For the most part, people were very understanding because once we were closing, other studios were closing as well. So it wasn't just us making the decision. It seemed like a community decision. We reopened one location February 1st. We reopened our Shanghai location February 1st through 3rd, because after that, it had been a few days and the government hadn't forced us to shut at that point. After day number 1, that district was forced to shut. So we had to close anyways. And after 3 days of Shanghai, it just seemed like the government was really wanting us to lock down. All fitness studios were closing. So we just made the decision, along with government orders, to just kind of close things down and do our home workouts from there. Wow.
And I mean, I've seen a lot of the description for the Chinese lockdown was that it was, I see a lot of the use of the word draconian, and I think that's been one of the reasons why it's been so successful, is the government's ability to just tell all of society, like, go home, stay at home, don't come out. What was that like to go through, where you were being mandatorily told by the government that you can't open, and were you in fact being told to stay at home?
It was a bit of a mix. They were telling us to be cautious. Bars and restaurants were still open for a while, and then it kind of went district by district. So there's several districts in Shanghai, and different ones were being told different things, which is why our Shanghai location closed last, because that was kind of the safest district and was having less restrictions. For the most part, they weren't telling us to stay indoors, but I think it was also because the virus was still very new at that point. We were very fortunate in Shanghai where the cases weren't too high, but it was also still the practice of social distancing, wearing a mask. Eventually, most bars and restaurants shut, so we couldn't do that, and we're doing a lot more cooking at home or ordering delivery and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until people started returning to the city where there was more of this forced practice of quarantining yourself, staying at home, and following the measures the government was issuing.
And so to that, I mean, how supportive were the government during this time for business? Did you get much assistance? Was there much information coming your way about how to tackle this? One feature of the US shutdown, or gradual shutdown, I should say at this point, and also here in Australia, is that the government is assuring small business that there'll be financial aid. Was that a feature? Just interested to understand how supportive the government was during this mandatory closure period.
Governments were giving different solutions for taxes and for different businesses as well. Mm-hmm. And then it would fall back into the building management, whether they would postpone your rent or cancel your rent for that month or the period that you were closed. And so it was really coming down a lot to local building management that was being able to kind of give more back, which I think is definitely worth reaching out to landlords in your home country to see if that's a possibility, or paying it later than the year for a postponement. I think the biggest thing for us was not trying to work against other fitness studios, but reaching out to all the F45s in China, asking what was working for them and kind of coming together, as well as other fitness studios or gyms that are in Shanghai, and working with the general managers or the studio managers there and kind of asking, hey, have you heard any new information? If you don't mind, just let's share and work together here instead of trying to separate, because the faster we can all reopen and work together as a team, the better we're all off going to be.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely see the importance of a coordinated response. And so immediately, how did your community respond? I think a lot of business owners are quite terrified of mandatory closure leading to memberships being cancelled or suspended. What was your experience?
I think for the most part, people have been really, really receptive to it and very kind with how things have been handled. We've tried to be as upfront with information as much as possible. I wrote a personal letter to all of our members. Our trainers have been interacting with them every single day, offering them support, offering them home workouts or strategies for creating accountability. We have all our group chats, and so people are seeing the discussion going on. If someone asks a question, we're answering it right away, and just creating kind of a positive light and a resource for people, because everyone's going through a stressful time right now. But if we can be some kind of positive, motivating force behind that, it's so crucial right now.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've got a view, although this is untested for the most part, that if your community really loves you, then there should be a higher level of support, because they want to see the business get through this and they want to get back to their daily workout. And for many of us, as we know, it's not just about the training, it's also about the social interaction. So was that something that you saw? Did you feel as though your community really wanted to see you succeed through this? And specifically, I suppose, did you see were people willing to keep their membership recurring throughout that period, or did you have to make modifications?
100%. People have been incredibly supportive and kind, like I said before, dropping us personal messages to thank us for everything that we've been doing. We're doing a lot of fun stuff with it too, where, some days we'll do a plank challenge and then one person in the group has to tag another member and send in a video. So we're creating this community outside of the studio walls now for people that are working from home, or asking them to send a photo of where they worked out and creating a collage of all these different at-home workouts or in the park workouts, and kind of piecing it together to show that, we're not just a community inside the studio, but outside as well. And I think it's been more than well received in just the terms of support and motivation we can continue to give, not just here, but around the world, because a lot of our members are stuck in their home countries as well. In terms of memberships, what we've done is that we've told our members we'll put their membership on pause until we can fully reopen. Now that we have one studio running since the past 2 weeks, and our second studio we reopened as of yesterday, those memberships are starting to roll back again. And we've started to see, for the last 3 to 4 weeks, people purchasing memberships, knowing that we're open. I think what people will find is that after being in isolation and home quarantine for so long, people are so ready to come back and work out with their friends, their family, their trainers. They miss it, and they miss being inside the studio with a community that can really push them and motivate them. I think for all of us who have done a home workout, we know we don't get the same motivation and the same laughs or sweat or air high fives at this point that we'll get when we're in F45. And I think that's a really important thing to remind everyone of, keeping that community and that energy going outside, because as soon as they're ready to come back, the energy is amazing.
It's a really encouraging bit of feedback. That's going to give people a lot of reason for hope. So you mentioned that you were doing live workouts that were catering to people who are at home. So that's to say that were you replicating the workouts that we had programmed? When I say we, I mean F45 headquarters. Were you just delivering that via WeChat or Instagram or some other social platforms? What did that look like?
We were doing, so my whole trainer team was still here. My full-time trainer team was still in Shanghai. and they've been legendary throughout this whole thing. So we were filming the movements in the studio and just creating a 2-minute video, nothing more than that, just so that people could see the movement perform properly, giving them the execution and also having a bit of fun with it. You know, maybe grabbing a sweat towel and using that as a tool for the workout to kind of, you know, wipe up the sweat from the coronavirus pandemic that's going on, and just having a few laughs. And then every morning we would send that workout into our group chat as well as the warm up and a template of the exercises so that it was listed out for them as well. So that if they forgot something, they could just see it there on the screen. And a lot of people were plugging in their devices into their home TVs, and kind of, you know, seeing our trainers on the screen was quite fun and gave them something to remember. The trainers are still hard at work, and we're still trying to encourage them and also give them that familiarity that your personal trainer that you see every day is still working out with you in a sense, so to speak.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, it's a minor, but I think it's an important point. Did you, the group that you broadcast that to, is that a closed group, or did you make that public?
It's a closed group. So anyone on a membership with us, or anyone that has had a membership with us, we would always welcome them back as well. We have a group for our members and a group for our challengers as well, because of course the 8-week challenge is an important part of F45 too. And that is something else that I'll probably talk to in a little bit, because maintaining the challenge during this was also important for us as well.
Yeah. Well, we're still mid challenge at the moment, and I think there'll be a lot of people that are just coming into the tail end of it on the home straight and thinking, wow, this couldn't have happened at a worse time. Were there any other adaptations that you made to your business to kind of get you through that period that come to mind?
Definitely. I think what's really important is the biggest thing is creating that sense of community, and within your trainer team as well as within your members, and just making sure your trainers feel important, because of course your members are the business and you want to make sure they're taken care of. We were doing check-ins with members, especially if we knew they were struggling a little bit more than maybe some others who had been in Shanghai. But also your trainer team. I mean, of course, there's going to be some shifts in how many hours people are going to get when things return to normal. But I think checking in with the trainers, making sure they're feeling taken care of, making sure they feel still a part of the team is so important. And also asking your trainers for help and support too. For our full-time team, we asked them to write down 3 ways they think we could work towards getting ourselves back off the ground and up and running once things get back to normal, kind of just brainstorming ideas, thinking out loud with each other, doing Zoom calls to check in. And I think also creating a routine and schedule is really, really important during this time, because it's so easy to just be like, okay, I'll get to it tomorrow, like nothing's moving. But the faster you start moving on these things, and the faster you can start brainstorming and working towards the other side of it, then you'll be better off for it. So we maintained our weekly meetings, we maintained our structures that we had set, and did what we could to continue our growth and our development, so that when things were ready to kick off, we wouldn't be scrambling to pick up the pieces, but we would be already 2 steps ahead.
Amazing. I love that. I think mindset is so important as we're going through these challenges. What role did mindset have for both you as a group and you personally? What were some of the crutches that you relied on to get you through the last 8 weeks or so of closure?
I think that structure and creating a routine is huge, because it's so easy to, start sleeping in and, okay, maybe I'll make something, maybe I'll just sleep in longer. And the more you fall out of it, the more you kind of sink into this period of what's even the point now kind of mentality. And if you can create a structure, whether you're allowed to leave and go for a run, or do your home workout, or, schedule your team meeting via Zoom or Facebook or whatever platform you use at 9 a.m. so that starting your day off with something, I think it's huge. I think another thing, if it's possible, is to have some kind of community and conversation going every single day, whether it's going to your local cafe, if your cafe is open, and talking to your barista just to get a coffee, organizing a potluck, whether you're a trainer team or your members, if, you know, once it clears up a little bit and you're allowed to do so, or just having those calls and some kind of social element to your day just to keep things smiling and laughing and having a bit of fun. And then for me, I think I've started meditating more. I've focused more on my own personal training, and some goals I'm trying to achieve when I can get back to a bit of a normal routine, racing and that sort of thing. And just laughing. I mean, as much as you can laugh and find something to make you smile, it just really helps. And it's so good for your heart and your soul, and to just stay positive. I did find that during this period of taking some time away and having more personal time and more time to do things that made me smile, and actually having conversations with people versus, okay, I'll grab a coffee with you for 15 minutes, but then I have to dash. I felt like I just laughed a lot more with friends and people, and got to know people better. And it really made me happy. And I think it made everyone happy in terms of trying to just stay positive and work through it.
Yeah, that's a great message. I love that. So were there any things in hindsight that you perhaps would have done a bit differently if you had, now that you've gone through that experience? Was there anything that you felt you could have done better?
It's hard to say. I think because we were the first ones to go through it, there was no by the book or any suggestions out there on the internet or other studios or anything to follow. I think what we did was probably the best we could have done for where we were at. Creating these online templates, creating the group feel and the check-ins, and just trying to think outside the box. What I did with my full-time staff was we all wrote things down in a spreadsheet of what we could be working on now in terms of moving forward, so that, like I said before, we weren't trying to pick up the pieces, but that goes from everything from marketing to membership sales that you want to do when you start again, to different ways to be creative, trying to tap into different networks, even flash sales of merchandise or that sort of thing. Anything we can do to get a step ahead of where we were currently at when things came back, and learning how to use all this extra time we were given to work towards that as well.
So where are you at today? Do you have a sense that you're out of the woods yet, or you know, is there a chance that this might not be over just yet for you there in Shanghai?
Things are really starting to feel back to normal. It seems like day by day, more things are becoming more relaxed. I was just out yesterday and everyone was out running with kids, having picnics. It does feel like there's this much more relaxed sense, and give it another few weeks and things are going to feel 100% unless something changes that we don't foresee. We're up to 2 studios running now, so just waiting on our 3rd to get approved, and hopefully that's not too far behind. And then I think it's just a matter of waiting for the rest of our members to return back here. Of course, there are a few in Shanghai that haven't felt quite comfortable coming back to the gym yet. And we've just honored their memberships and said, you know, when you feel comfortable, we'll be here for you, because we don't want it to be a turnoff for them of, hey, well, glad we've taken your money and, you know, see you when we see you kind of thing. But we just feel like the more support we can give for people, especially when they're in this stress situation, the better off we'll be in the long run.
That's a really interesting point, because I think that's another question going through our minds is, you know, from this point on, now that the world is starting to get a lot more educated about what the real risks are, I think a lot of us were probably fairly lax when it came to washing hands, and you know, just sort of we took for granted a lot of things that now are really top of mind. Has that endured? Have you had to? I mean, I presume that. Well, in fact, I know for a fact, because I've been to 2 of your 3 studios, that you're great operators and the studios are really well maintained. But have you found that there's a sort of a renewed concern about hygiene? Have you had to make any new adaptations to sort of give comfort to your members that that you know they're operating in a really hygienic, sanitized space?
The procedures that we've implemented, and some of them are government mandated and some of them from just us doing it, is if you've been traveling in the last 14 days, you can't attend the studio. You have to have your temperature checked and write down your travel history and your name and information on a login sheet every morning.
Wow.
And then before and after classes, of course, we're sanitizing, wiping down equipment, asking everyone to bring their own sweat towel and water bottle and using the hand sanitizer, and just doing a deep clean of the studios every day as well. And I think it's given people a bit of peace of mind too, knowing that we're not taking things lightly, because of course we don't want to have to close again, and we want people to feel safe as well. And I think it's important to kind of do the extra measures and do the larger things, even if it seems like more work and a bit of hassle. I think in the long run, just to play it safe and kind of reassure people that it is a safe space is going to do more for owners and studio managers than to just, you know, have things going right back to normal from the get-go.
Last question that I have is, you know, for a business owner or a coach, general manager like yourself, who's going through this crisis now, you know, 8 weeks later, 8 weeks after you have, you know, what would be your advice to, you know, what would you like to leave them with, you know, as they're approaching this now for the very first time?
Try and keep an open and positive mindset. I think the more you can stay positive, stay focused, stay grounded, it's going to help you a lot more in the long run. Like I said, keep those schedules and the routines. Reach out to your trainer team for help and support. Have those weekly meetings and schedule discussions of what more can we be doing during this time now to action ahead of where we want to go. And be open and honest with your members. Maybe it's writing a letter to them, or reaching out with an email, or even sending them a personal message saying, you know, what the status is, where you think things might be headed, measures that you'll be taking, and just say even that maybe you don't know exactly what's going on right now, the full scope of things, but you're working hard to get that information and will be communicated as clearly as possible. And I think also just really honoring your trainer team. I mean, they've been my general manager, my head trainer, all the studio managers, and then our part-time trainers as well. They've been incredible during this period. And the more community you can build within them, I think the more it feeds into the members, as always. And even now, so more than the sessions we did at the start of 2020, they'll remember this period more offline than the workouts we did at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
I really loved a line that you quoted, and I hope you don't mind me quoting you now, but when I asked you how you're doing, you said, we're doing really well here. We're staying positive throughout it all, and we're supporting our community now more than ever. It's a challenge, but it's pushed us to rise to the occasion and grow stronger as a result. Yeah, I mean, hats off to you guys. You've done a phenomenal job, and you know, we hope that this episode is now over for you. And I think anybody tuning in will be very grateful for your insight. And you know, we all want to see you succeed. We all want to see all of us succeed as we go through this real period of uncertainty and fear. So yeah, look, I hope that for anyone tuning in, that this has been really helpful. I'm sure there have been questions that haven't been posed or answered. If you'd like to drop a comment below, I'll do my best to come back to each and every one of you. And yeah, Lauren, a huge heartfelt thank you from me and on behalf of everybody who's tuning in, who's got some value out of this. You're a sensation, and you know, we're really glad to see that you're still around and that the business is coming back online to much fanfare, it sounds.
Thank you so much. And of course, anything we can do to help support the community as well. If people have questions for us, we're happy to keep sharing what we've learned and what we'll continue to learn as we continue to get out of this period. So thank you.
Yeah, great. I mean, perhaps in a couple more weeks, we might check in again and just see how you guys are managing.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and I'll come back to you shortly with another update.
Well, thank you.